to interview my mom about her supernatural and or whatever you want to call it, ghost, spiritual things that she's encountered in her life.
They're kind of exhausting to keep telling these stories, you know.
You only gotta do it once. Why don't you tell us some of what you've experienced?
I will. I'm happy to. I would like to. Can I just start with how it started?
Yes.
Okay. Because I think that's important, and I was myself curious because for the first 15, 16 years of my life, I didn't have these experiences, and then I did. So I do think it's important that my whole life, people who've known me have told me that I'm very, very sensitive, right? That I feel things deeply. They tended to mean more emotionally, right, than premonitory, than in a sense of premonition. They just meant that I felt things deeply. So that was always part of who I was. But the spiritual, psychic kinds of things weren't always a part of me until when I was about 17 years old. I was getting ready to go to work. I worked at a bank, and I was taking a shower. And before I went in the shower, I turned on the ironing. I got the ironing board set up, turned on the iron because I was going to get my clothes ready. I got out of the shower and went to iron my clothes. I was not dressed, so I was naked. I was wet, barefoot, wet hair, going to iron my outfit for work. And I realized that I didn't have any steam or water in the iron. And so I reached over to the sink and I grabbed the metal faucet to turn on some water. And I turned on the water, and I remember hearing inside myself and feeling inside myself a buzzing sensation from my arm down to the iron, from the iron back to the faucet. And when it got back, when the arc was completed, I was severely shocked. I had a real jolt of electricity. And the next thing I knew, I was flat on my back, my eyes were open, and I couldn't see anything. And my sisters, who had heard a great commotion from down the hall, had run to see what was wrong. And I was there on the floor, the ironing board, everything was on the floor. I was hot to the touch. I was open, I couldn't see anything. I thought I'd gone blind, and I had obviously been quite electrocuted. So, they said my hair was dry. At any rate, pretty soon after that moment, I started to notice things I hadn't noticed before, and to be highly sensitized in a way I had not been before to what seems to me energy. You know, it's like the world. I just became sensitive in a very different way, and I do think, because I believe, right, that everything is energy. Everything is energy. This paper, this cup. You look at it close enough, the molecules are dancing. I think that because my system was amped electrically, I'm just more sensitive to things. So that's how I think it started, and I think it's important because even though there may be some genetic component, and I think that there are genetic components to all sorts of traits, I think mine happened because of an event. And hopefully if I passed down a tendency to genetically, then that's great.
Thank you.
Yeah. The other thing which I had chatted with you about earlier, honey, before just going into a telling of the tales, I think that this is important as well, just because after a period of having so many kinds of experiences, you know, I began to not care, really. I don't know if I ever cared if people believed me, because I knew what I know what I've experienced, and sometimes they've been confirmed by others. Sometimes it's just been me, and I really don't care. But I got tired of people sort of saying offhandedly that such things didn't exist, or that such things couldn't be true, right? One day, your dad and I were driving back. We were a couple hours out of the city, and there was a smell in the car that was very definitely the smell of a red onion. And I asked your father if he had just burped. And he said yes. It had been a quiet burp, but he had burped, and I smelled the red onion. And I, was disgusted and just sat there. And a few minutes later, this thought came to me, and the thought was this, that the red onion your dad had on a sandwich had maybe been in my dad's refrigerator for a week or two. And prior to that, it was on a grocery store shelf. And prior to that, it was on a truck, probably from California. So this red onion, who was pulled from its life source, which would be the earth, maybe as long as a month ago, right, retained its unique energy, imprint, calling card after all of that. Do you understand, right? So that even going through your dad's system, this thing made itself known to me through its cellular, unique print. And so what I came up with that moment was, wow, the next time someone tells me that when a human being dies or when an animal dies, that's it, that there's nothing of them left. Really, right? A red onion, right? Again, ripped from its life source, and a month later, I know that that's what that was, because of something we can't see. It's its energy. So I saw that, and I have actually talked to people about that and given them that as an example of what I believe is the enduring imprint of the energy that we have.
That's really cool. I like that.
Yeah, it's don't tell me that when we're done, that's it. Something as relatively simplistic, molecularly, as an onion. Then we're much more than that. Call them sort of, instant replays. Things that have happened at a previous moment in time, that because the situation is what it is, the storm energy is the same, or some other constellation of things is the same, that the thing just replays itself. It's not an interactive moment. It's not meant for me. I can't do anything to it or change it. It just replays like a tape. There's those which are replays, and then there's premonitions where I know something is going to happen. And I either know it because I just know it intuitively, or I know it because I've been visited by someone who's passed, who's told me, and the thing does happen. I've had situations where I have physically left, or I feel that I've left my physical body, gone to other places, seen what has happened, and known about them before the phone call comes through. And I've had moments of insight and knowledge related to some criminal events that I would have no business knowing. So, all different kinds. I'll start with, I think, sort of the replays, because I think that those are rather common. I hear a lot of people talk about how, whatever, they live in a particular house, or they walked on a particular street and they see out of the corner of their eye, they see something that happens over and over and over again. It doesn't change. The same lady in the period costume walks down 4 stairs, and that's all you ever see. Like, who cares? What is that, right? That, to me, a lot of people, when they have a ghost encounter, I think that what they're encountering is a replay. Either, for whatever reason, the event was imprinted. So, my, one little replay thing was at the house, a different house. Your dad and I were in bed, and it was really storming. You were in bed, you were just a toddler. It was really storming, and we couldn't really sleep. And my side of the bed was close to a floor vent. It was an old-fashioned house that had open venting between the floors. And no one was downstairs, right? It was just the 3 of us living in the house. We were all upstairs. And at one point, there was a break in the storm. After a big crack, thunder and stuff, there was a moment of silence. And we, your dad and I, heard very clearly older gentleman's voice say, and I believe he didn't clear his throat. He just said, "Boy, this is a heck of a storm we're having." But he said it clear, and he said it, if I had any money, I would have bet that the voice came from about 4 feet below my head, which would have been in the room below me. And I asked your dad, "Did you hear that?" He said, "Yes, I did." And there you have it. When I told my landlady about it, because we were renting that house at the time, and I wasn't scared, I just told her because I thought it was cool. It was the house she grew up in, a house that her parents lived in forever. And she got goosebumps, which for a lot of people, myself included, is, it's your visceral response to what a truth is.
That's a cool way to put it.
She got all emotional, and she said that the room we heard it from had been her parents' bedroom. That's where they had lived for years, and that her father, heck was a word that he used, when he was excited about something, when something was really big. And not that that's an uncommon word for that generation, but she was convinced that it was her father that I had heard. And she took comfort in it, and it made sense to me because it was obvious it was non-interactive. It was obvious that we were in the midst of a really powerful electrical moment. And I think his voice was caught on, some sort of tape, and we heard it. That's it. Another replay that was visual instead of auditory was, I was living on a farm and quite remote, more remote than where we are now, and driving home with a woman who used to live with us. Her name was Claire. Really, really bad winter storm. We'd gotten out of work early and we're barely making it home to our little farmhouse. And as our road, in order to get to our farm, you took the gravel road, and then the gravel road split, and we had to go to the right, and then we had sort of a hairpin curve to get to our farmhouse. So as we approached the split in the road, Claire said to me, "Watch, or just keep an eye out." She said, "See how that car takes the curve." And what she was referring to, we both saw at the same moment, a black vehicle that looked really like a very old farm vehicle, like an old farm truck, which, living where we lived, didn't surprise us, but we had both seen this vehicle approaching the curve. And she said, "See how that truck takes the curve," is what she said, right? Meaning how much ice is there going to be, whatever. So she's watching the road. I'm watching this old late model black farm truck, distance of about a mile, but nothing in between. I mean, there's stubble in the winter. There's like no blocking the vision. I watched this old truck come to the curve, and I either blinked or didn't blink, but I looked back and the truck is gone. And I said, holy shit, Claire, they didn't make it. They didn't make the curve, which was completely understandable because it was a terrible, icy road. So we inch our way, and she's more, tight driving than ever. We inch our way, and then we get to that curve, and you guessed it, there's no black truck, They're not in the ditch, they're not sideways, they're not anywhere. And that was strange. And what Claire and I thought, we never took the time to go to the library and find out if there was an accident on that curve in the winter of 1938, in a black or whatever, because it didn't matter, because what we knew was that in the middle of the day, of a bright winter day, under extreme weather conditions, in terms of danger, not visibility, it's clear and crisp and slick. We saw the truck, and we saw the truck move, and we saw the truck come to the corner, and then the truck disappeared, and with nowhere to go, right? So I believe that is a replay of a moment of an accident or an event that was traumatic to someone, and we just happened to see it, and I think it probably replays on days like today, as well. So those are some replays. I think they can be visual, I think they can be auditory. I think they're cool, but I don't think they mean, you can't do anything with them. Premonitions, I suppose, for me, the two most stunning ones, and the one just seems ridiculous to me, like why should I have known, or who cares that I picked up on this? But it was August 30th, and my two girlfriends were going to pick me up to take me shopping. They were having a clearance sale, so we were so excited. And we were going to get clothes for Christmas. And I woke up that morning, and I'm not someone who's prone to depression, but I was absolutely kind of crippled by overwhelming sense of grief and sadness and heaviness. And I didn't know what it was about. I didn't understand it. Your dad noticed. I said something to him. I remember saying to him that I thought that something really big was going to happen, and something very sad was going to happen. And I knew what it wasn't. I said to him, and then later I said to my girlfriends, because when they picked me up and were driving to Des Moines, they're like, Nancy, what is up with you today? What is your problem? What is up with you? And I kept saying, something big is going to happen, something sad is going to happen. I said to them and to your dad, I said, it's not like a whole bunch of people, are going to die in some natural disaster. I said, it's not that. I said, but there's like a collective worldwide grief right around the corner. That is, and once I articulated it, I thought, that's it. That's what I'm feeling. So, anyways, whatever, the day goes by, and I couldn't shake the feeling, and I didn't shake the feeling, and I go to bed. We got a call really, really early in the morning here from their grandpa in England to say that Lady Diana had died that night or whatever in Paris, a few hours prior. And when your dad got off the phone and he said Lady Diana died, of course, the chills, the whole thing. And again, it might seem like a stupid, silly thing, but I said to him, I said, oh, that's it then. That's what it was. Because what I kept feeling and what I was visualizing in my head was a wave of grief about to hit the shore. It was a collective wave of grief. And, and that was it, because that is what happened. There was a collective. Who cares what was the point? I don't know. very similarly when you were about 10, maybe younger, and we went to the circus.
Yeah.
And we got there, and the minute we walked into the auditorium, I just knew. I said to your dad, something bad's going to happen here. And
I was oblivious to that feeling,
Yes.
right? You didn't want to let me know. Yeah.
And I said, I wish I was wrong, but I'm not. And so you guys enjoy the show because I can't, whatever. So we sat there and the thing about the circus, right? The three-ring circus, and they're very good at this. They're like magicians. You attend to what they want you to attend to. So something's going on in ring 1, and they're dinking with ring 2, and the lights and whatever. And so I just watched. I watched and I waited, and I watched and I waited, and whatever. And then there was a moment, like 45 minutes into it or something, where they shut the middle ring went dark, and they were doing something in this ring, but I was watching the middle ring. And I'm watching the middle ring, and there's a guy climbing up on the rigging to go take down curtains or what have you. And I watched him, and then I watched him fall. And I heard his head smack. Because I was looking and listening,
Yeah.
I heard his head smack the little raised circular things that they have around the ring, that they open up and whatever. They're raised off the ground about a foot, and I heard and saw his head smack the thing, and I had two thoughts simultaneously, and the first was, well, that's it then. That was it, And then I thought, because I knew that I saw it happen, I thought, if somebody doesn't help him in like about 3 seconds, I'm standing up and screaming. If nobody because people weren't looking for that to happen. And indeed, like really right at the point where I was simply going to say, man down, cut the clowns, they were on him. They got him, And
Do you know if he passed?
no, he didn't pass. It was on the news that night.
Good.
I just have to say that what was so interesting to me was really how good they were at dealing with him and getting the ambulance in with your flashlights for the stretcher people. A whole bunch of people never knew what happened, right?
The show didn't stop.
No. He was tended to. And so it was on the news, and I was sure the guy had cracked his neck. He didn't. They said that he broke a number of ribs, and I think a leg or something, but he was going to live, and he was okay. I remember, after they got him help, I sort of sat back and I was like, okay. And then I could enjoy the show.
Now you can enjoy the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So those are like, and then my other premonition, really honestly, the first two have no meaning, and what's the point? I mean, who cares that I knew that? I didn't intervene at either. I couldn't change either. My presence didn't matter for either. This last one had great personal meaning. Well, this last one I'm going to tell right now had great personal meaning, but I still don't know what the point is that I knew. And it was, my mom had been diagnosed with terminal brain cancer, and there was no way out but out. And she'd been given a timeline, and you try to ignore those timelines, but they're in your head, And my mom was a fighter, and she was young. She was 69, but she was strong and everything. And anyways, she knew that she was dying, and we had conversations about it all the time, and I was happy that we had conversations about it. But in May of that year, and I think at that point my mom had been given 6 months, maybe 8 months. something like that. It was in May of that year, at any rate, and it was at night, and I was upstairs picking up clothes to wear to work the next day. And I'm in my closet, and I'm trying to figure out so I don't have to deal with it in the morning, because it's in the morning. It's all I can do to get out of here. But I'm picking out clothes, and I'm quite aware of the fact that I'm supposed to turn around and look at my digital clock, which is in my bedroom. I'm just like clear as a bell. I don't hear, but I know, turn around and look at the clock. So I did. I turned around and looked at the clock, and it's 8:31 on the digital clock, right? 8:31. And here, anyways, we get power outages a lot, and when we get power outages, and then digital clocks come back on if that they flash, right? So, again, much like with the circus guy, when I looked at the clock, there was nothing unusual. It said 8:31. There was nothing unusual. He was on the rigging, but I saw the moment where it changed, and it went from being a regular 8:31 to beginning to flash 8:31, right? 8:31, 8:31, 8:31, and I was like, well, we must have had a power outage. It's weird, whatever. So I go over and I fix the clock, and as I fix the clock to hit reset or something, I know at that moment what it means. And I immediately came downstairs, and your dad was doing yoga in the living room here. And I said, my grandma, who had passed the year prior, I said, my grandma just told me my mom's going to die on August 31st. Which would be 8:31, right? So, because your dad had lived with me forever by then and knew me, said, oh, I'm so sorry.
Yep. He doesn't
that's
question
too
it.
bad.
Yeah.
So, I only told one other person besides him, because I didn't want to start this collective expectation, so I told my sister, and she promised not to tell anybody, and she too had known forever, but I just said, look, I'm just telling you this. And because I didn't want it to be true, we didn't tell anybody, but beyond that, we decided that maybe I was wrong, maybe it was Grandma, but maybe what she was telling us were like, the pick 3 numbers for the lottery, like 831. So we played 831, and we never won anything. And on August 30th, called me that evening to say, I think you're wrong about Mom. She's no different today than she's been for weeks. I don't think she's dying tomorrow. I think you're wrong. And I said, I would love to be wrong. I said, I am quite sure that Mom is leaving us tomorrow in some significant capacity. Even if she doesn't die, I think she's going into a coma. I think she's leaving in some significant capacity. Grandma was extremely clear about it. And so we just basically said, well, we'll see, love you. And then, so then at noon the next day, I got a phone call at work that my mom took a real turn in the morning and she died. So, what's the point of that? What's the point? Nothing, no point. Nobody benefited at all. I didn't need proof that I had these things happen. It just, whatever. It was worthless. I didn't do anything with it.
And I can't remember. Did you say, did the room get cold when you knew that it was your grandmother flashing the clock? Did it get cold or not?
Not that I remember.
Okay.
I've had experiences where certainly there's a definite drop in temperature before something materializes or something. My sister-in-law died giving birth to my niece. So my sister-in-law died in childbirth. Obviously a tragedy, unexpected, all that. And so it wasn't time for goodbyes, and she never saw her baby alive and all that. So very burdensome family drama, loss. And her name was Linda. And in the year after Linda died, I was in college at the time, And I had had a few very, very, very lucid dreams with Linda in them. I'd had two. The first, I'm not going to go into great detail about them except to say that the first dream that I had about her after she died, which felt more like a visitation than a dream, but it happened while I was asleep, and it had the storyline of a dream. Linda's main focus was on her baby. How was the baby? Was she healthy? What did she look like? What was she doing, right? What was she eating? How much did she weigh? It was all about the baby. And then when Linda came to me in another dream that first year, her questions were all about my brother, her husband, you know. How was he doing? What was he doing? Was he okay? You know. And in both of those dreams, she had appeared to me still as pregnant. Because when she died, she was still pregnant. So, and that's interesting, I think, actually, that I never even made that connection, because really when she did die, she was still pregnant, so. So then, like, a couple months after the 1-year anniversary or so, it's a summer night, and I'm in college, I'm going to graduate school, I'm there for the summer, and I'm in this big old house with a bunch of girls, some of whom I knew quite well, and some of whom were literally just staying there for the summer. Like, got a room for us for 3 weeks or a month, right? And we barely knew more than their first name and that they had cash to pay for the room. So, I didn't have a relationship with everybody in the house is the point. And this one summer night, it was a really, really, really hot, brutal middle of the summer. I consolidated the fans from my room with my friend Karen, and we put all our fans together in one room. You know, old house, no air conditioning, and we were just miserable. So we had the windows open, and we had probably 5 fans in her room, and I'm sleeping on the floor on a sheet. We're sweating like dogs. Awful night. Karen somehow manages to sleep. I'm laying on the floor, you know, it's the middle of the night, whatever, storm's going. And I just felt compelled to look at the door that led to the hallway, of course. And I looked at the door, and there was, fully appeared, you know, fully formed in the doorway, was Linda. And
As if she was living, standing there, or
it was Linda. It was Linda in the best way I can say it is like a it was like a hologram.
okay,
I couldn't see through her, but I knew she wasn't fully 3-dimensional. But she was like a hologram, and head to toe. And her hair was in a bobbed blonde thing. And what she was wearing, 2 things that struck me, was she was wearing a long white t-shirt, like, you know, college girls, they used to at least, wear like big guys t-shirts to bed, you know, just past their underwear. Like, guys t-shirts are the greatest thing to wear to bed. So she was wearing a white guys t-shirt and bobbed hair, and she wasn't pregnant anymore. And, you know, and I looked at her, and I wasn't scared or shocked, because there was so much energy in the room that I actually, and I need to back up for just a moment, before I saw her, I was expecting to see something. There was so much energy in the room, I couldn't believe Karen was sleeping through it. I mean, the room was crackling, and I thought, bloody hell, something's, you know, coming. So I wasn't surprised to see her, and I certainly wasn't scared to see her. And it was one of those, okay, this is what was manifesting, right? So she spoke to me. She didn't speak to me in words. Here's what she did. She, you know, like when I found her eyes, then that's all. Like, I didn't see her anymore. I just was like locked into her eyes, right? And she spoke to me. I heard her words, but it wasn't through her mouth. And she said the things that you hoped people would say, you know, things like, it was my time to go, right? Please tell everyone I am fine. Tell people you heard from me. There was nothing you could do because myself and my sister had some residual guilt because we were there when Linda fell ill in the hospital and stuff. We sort of beat ourselves up afterwards for should have done something different, you know. So anyways, she said all those things, you know, and more than that, she sort of, there was this visceral feeling that I had sort of from head to toe that she just like, she physically removed the negative energy, the negative baggage that I had held on to was like lifted. It was lifted for me. And when that sensation happened and I felt it happen, it was like this unwrapping or something. And I looked sort of back up at her. She didn't disappear. She didn't like float through the door. She didn't crumble away or become stardust. It's like she released me from her eyes. You know, she released me from her gaze. And when I looked back, she was gone. And that was that. So the next day.
And you're positive you were not sleeping?
Oh yeah, no.
That's so cool.
Because I was awake waiting for something, you know. I mean, I couldn't sleep. It was too hot, and then it was too crackly, you know.
Yeah.
So the next day, you know, at some point in the afternoon, I'm thinking, okay, I got to call my family. I got to call my brother, you know, especially, and I got to call my mom and dad. And mom and dad, you know, were pretty strong, practicing Catholics, and yet even they, oh God, I mean, they knew my stuff, and they accepted me, and they weren't scared of me or anything, but I was sitting on the front steps of this old house, sort of practicing in my head what I was going to say to them, how the phone calls were going to go, you know, and who was I going to call first, and how was I not going to make it seem weird or whatever. And so I'm sitting there, and one of the girls who was just a summer tenant came out. She sits next to me. Her name was Rhonda. She sits on the stoop, you know, and we're just sitting there. And you know, she says, "Boy, you know, what about that storm last night, huh?" I said, "Yeah, it was major, man, major. Yeah." And she says, "Did you get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom?" I said, "No." "Are you sure?" She says, "Oh, yeah, no. I was in Karen's room all night, man. Worst night, you know." And I wasn't about to tell her anything because I didn't know her, because I didn't want her to think I was crazy, and it was none of her business anyway. So it's important to note that I had, at that point, bobbed blonde hair, which was a common style, right? But my hair at that point in my life was quite similar to how Linda appeared to me. So Rhonda says, "Nancy," she says, "I think you were sleepwalking last night." She said, "I got up at like, whatever, 2:30, whatever. She said, I got up to go to the bathroom. I came into the hallway." She says, "And I saw you standing outside Karen's bedroom door." And she said, "And I called your name several times, but you didn't turn around." She said, "So I just thought, well, maybe she's sleepwalking. I probably shouldn't wake her up." And in my head, I'm thinking two things. I'm thinking, if you're messing with me, I'm going to kill you. And I'm also thinking, I didn't need that confirmation at all. I just simply don't, it doesn't matter what people believe to me. But I thought, this is going to help my brother and my parents take it more seriously. So, that was Linda. And then there's one.
Didn't you say saw her too?
My brother. When I called him, he didn't see her. He said he felt that she came to him in a dream.
Okay.
Yes, that as well that night. And between what the strength of his dream moment and and my experience that confirmed for him that he had been visited by her. Yeah. I also knew the last thing, and this has proven to be true. When she left, or when she let me go, I knew, and I said this, I'm sure I said this to my family. I said that we won't see her again. I won't see her again in that, she's done being Linda. No, I won't see her anymore like that. And I haven't. So, I will tell a story with the chimes in the background. Well, it's not a story, it's something that happened. And this was 10 years ago, maybe, a bit longer. Your dad and I were getting ready for a party at the house, so we're just, working on cutting veggies and the music's playing and getting the house together and stuff. And it's important to know that I had a friend whose dad was sick and had been sick for a while, and he was no sicker that day than he'd been really again for quite some time. At any rate, your dad and I were working on the party, and I really sort of out of nowhere felt just like I had been chopped off at the knees or something. I just felt like I was going to collapse into a heap, and I grabbed the counter and I told your dad I needed desperately to lay down. So he helped me over to the couch, and he said that I so quickly, completely, checked out. I mean, he said I was gone the minute I laid down, and that I was so gone that he watched to make sure that I was breathing, because I just didn't seem that I was there anymore at all. And I was breathing, so he went back to work, and 15, 20 minutes later, not so long after that, I remember clearly just sort of popping up on the couch, which at that time was this way, so I could look into the kitchen. I popped up and I looked at him, and I said, Pa B, which was the nickname I gave my friend's father. I said, Pa B just died. And he looked at me and he said, what? And I said, Pa B just died. And your dad looked up and said that he was sorry. And indeed, 20 minutes later, half hour at the most, we got a phone call from someone in the family that yes, indeed, he had passed. Quite when I said he did. So, whatever that's worth, I don't know. I do know that when I spoke to my friend after his father had died, he had been in the room with his dad right after his dad passed, and my friend remarked that he felt that the room was crowded, that there were lots of people there with his dad, lots of people in the room with his dad. And I said that I was quite sure that I was among them, because I certainly wasn't home, I was quite sure that I had been there. So. When you were young, I had a feeling, I had had a sense for a while that someone was trying to communicate with me, someone that I didn't know, or that I didn't know that I knew. But I felt like just odd little certain things had happened where I thought, someone's trying to, come through. And then one night, laying in bed, and I was laying on my side, and I just, like most people who experience these things, I think, was drawn to or knew that I was sort of meant to look in a particular area, wait and watch, And so I was looking in the doorway, and something started to appear. And it's funny because I just heard or read, someone else talking about how when entities or when they encountered spirits, they seldom appeared full-bodied, right? That they were frequently missing a limb or something, and not that they'd had some tragedy in life, but that frequently, it wasn't the whole body. Well, this image, this entity began to appear by a sort of a swirling ball of energy, light crystal stuff, round about heart height of a adult person. So in my doorway, there's this spinning energy, and it begins to sort of form from the center. What begins to form is a torso. And I'm watching it unfold, and I'm so curious because I've not had something appear that way, right? Each time a new form of a form comes through, I'm like intrigued. I go, well, this is new. I've not had this before, right? Or whatever. And so it started to form a torso and reveal itself to be a male torso. And I looked at it, and it was familiar to me. It was familiar. I didn't have a name, but I thought that I knew who that was. And I was looking forward to it getting to the face, or getting more done so I could know who it was and what the point was. And pretty much right about the time that it was going to be a face, you kind of popped around the bedroom door. You said, "Mom, who's that?" is what you said. The bedroom was right next, down the hall, and when you said, "Mom, who's that?" it went away, and I couldn't tell you who it was because I didn't yet know who it was. But you saw the beginnings of it as well, and it didn't scare you. I think you probably were drawn to the hallway like I was drawn to the hallway. There was something going on, and you got out of bed, and I just turned over in bed.
Wish I could remember that. Really wish I could.
Just so cute, though. And kind of demanding, "Mom, who's that?" UFO, everybody knows what it means, right? Unidentified flying object. So I'm just going to make a little plea that anybody, right, when someone says, "Do UFOs exist?" what they're asking is, do flying things exist that we can't identify? The answer would be yes. Right? Saying that UFOs exist is not the same as saying that all UFOs are flying saucers, right? Or that any UFO is the mark of an intelligent being. It simply means there's stuff flying around, we don't know what it is. So I just want to kind of be clear on that, because I'm a stickler for words and so on and so forth. So, what I will tell you is the story of a UFO that I do think might have been an example of something out of this world. But I can't identify it, I don't know who could. So, it's when my sister and your dad lived on the North Shore, and in a very heavily wooded, sort of remote, old, sort of exclusive suburb. So at any rate, your dad and I got home one night, drove down the long, long driveway. And this was such a long time ago. I'm afraid a little foggy on the details of how the sighting first happened. But what I know is that as we approached the coach house, which is where he lived, the coach house, which was the small house behind this like old mansion, we both happened to look up at the sky because the stars out there were fabulous. And we saw in the sky something we'd never seen before and didn't really even know how to describe to each other or whatever. It was long and it was narrow. And it looked both mechanical and organic. It was lit from within. It had lights on the perimeter of it that had different colors, pastel tones, but each different. The thing is, it's like the center of this shape was solid, and that looked like the mechanical part, right? The center of the piece was the part that looked mechanical and solid. And the perimeter of it is what looked organic, because the perimeter of it undulated like a jellyfish.
I was gonna say, it sounds like a freaking jellyfish.
It was like a flying jellyfish with a hardcore metal center. Right, basically.
Probably not a military device.
Yeah, I don't know. Just odd. And the odd thing, more than almost anything, like much like people who, again, have different experiences, they will tell you about a drop in temperature that they can't explain, right? Or they will tell you about a visceral knowing that they can't explain other than saying it. And sometimes they'll talk about a silence that is deafening, right? A quiet that is unnatural. Your dad and I were struck by, once we could find our voices and the thing disappeared, we were so struck by how loudly quiet it was, how broadly, absolutely, it was as if no sound were allowed to exist.
This thing scared the hell out
Well,
of
this thing would.
everything.
Well, I don't even know if it. We didn't feel frightened. We felt like in awe and felt like we were having some shared hallucination. Only we knew we'd have root beer, or nothing, And it was like sound wasn't allowed to exist in the vacuum of the presence of this thing. I just can't. It was stunningly quiet, unnaturally quiet. The whole area, and the thing moved forward as if propelled from inside, and the outside undulated, and the colors changed, and it didn't Star Trek go away. We did watch it move south.
With no sound.
North to south with no sound. It didn't make any sound. It just was no sound at all. We didn't see it. We didn't see it descend. We didn't see it go up. We just all of a sudden didn't see it anymore. We watched it move, and then we watched it go away, and we truly, for however long it was, stood there side by side with our mouths open and our eyes to the sky.
That's one of my favorite.
Yeah, that was something very cool. Not at all frightening, just very, very cool. Yeah, I'm curious about that. And and I will say, we were close to, we were close to a former naval base there, but it certainly looked like nothing we'd ever seen, and there were just so many other properties about it that were odd. So,
if it would have landed where you were standing, how much space do you think it would have taken up?
it seemed huge.
Did you see both sides at once? Could you see the whole thing? Did you get a sense of depth?
Not for me to be able to say to account for height and distance. The lake is the backdrop. Distance is impossible. Size is impossible.
Yeah. Do you think it noticed you?
I don't know. It almost in our mind it was like, I don't know. Like it kind of not like it felt like it was putting on a show for us or anything, but it was like it seemed like it was doing something. It was doing something with the lights, and the fact that it was visible and then it was made not visible. I don't know. I don't want to read too much into it. It just was a cool thing. It was a UFO because it was flying. I don't know what it was.
That's really cool. Thanks.
When my mom was in her coma, and I absolutely, at least twice during that 6 weeks period, I had her experiences. And what the cool thing is about that is that when she woke up, the first thing she said to me when she saw me after she woke up was, she said, "So do you have anything you can tell me about? Do you have anything you can tell me about what was happening when I was gone?" Something like that, which was really cool. As a matter of fact, Mom, I do. That was really cool. So, okay, so my sister had, your aunt, right, had brain surgery, lots of brain trauma in the family, and it was the night of her surgery, and she was in intensive care, right, in the neurology ward, which is kind of a scary combination of terms.
Yeah.
And so she was laying in there, and it was her first night after the procedure. And it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and myself and several other family members were staying in the family room across the hall, spending the night in there, sleeping on chairs and stuff. And I couldn't sleep. I got up, and I couldn't sleep. So I went outside and hung out at the nurse's station, and then I went in the room. And even before I went in there, because her room had a lot of glass in it so the nurses could see, but even before I went in there, I thought I saw something above her bed. She was just seriously, obviously, hooked up to stuff and head frame and all that. And when I got in there and I looked closer at her, what I saw was a shaft of energy that started at her head. It was the full length of her body, and it kind of was cone shaped up to the ceiling, and it was just very clear to me. I thought to myself, well, if any of the nurses would look up from their paperwork, they would see this over my sister. And what is important to know is that earlier that same day, we had a relative in Texas, an uncle, who had died of brain tumor that day, the same day of her surgery.
For brain tumor.
Yeah. So, obviously that was a terrible phone call for us to get while we were waiting for surgery. It was really like, wow, really? You couldn't wait to, That's not what we need to know. But at any rate, the truth is he had died that day of a brain tumor. And I wasn't even actually thinking about that consciously when I saw this above Anne. What I was really afraid of was that I was watching her die, and that's why I had been woken up. Because I thought her spirit was leaving her body. So I was just, watching, and then I looked closer at the energy, and I realized that it wasn't leaving her and going up. It was coming from up and it was going down to her. That it was like raining, you know, it's like raining crystal energy on her. And I know I keep talking about like energy and crystals, and that's just, those are the terms that, you know, I mean, in some ways I'm terribly grounded, and in others, whatever. I'm just saying I'm not someone who, I mean, I love rocks, but I don't, you know, I don't pray to stones in the morning, do you know what I'm saying? But what I saw, the best way I can describe it is healing energy that was raining down on my sister from head to toe. And when I saw that and I finally recognized which direction the energy was going, it became real clear to me, or it felt like knowledge, that it was actually my uncle, who was still very much present, right? He just passed 4 hours ago or something. And he was very close to my sister. She probably knew him better than many of the other kids did. So it just seemed like a, you know, him stopping by and giving her some healing stuff. That's what it felt like. And it was, you know, kind of magical.
How long did this go on? How long did stuff fall? Did you see the light shaft like leave?
I don't remember how it ended. I think it just, I mean, it didn't, you know, I don't know how it ended. I don't have a memory of, like, you know, a switch going off and the ceiling going dark or anything, you know. I don't remember it being abrupt. I don't remember, maybe it just stopped, I don't know. I don't remember much past having what felt like a real salient moment of knowledge of what it was that I was seeing and witnessing. So I do think, you know, all of these things, I mean, most of them anyways, you know, they're energy related, they're electrical in nature. I mean, we are biologically we're chemical and electrical beings. That's what we are. Our thoughts are electrical and chemical. And matter doesn't die, it changes form, so. I've had not just a number of experiences, but a number of experiences that vary in terms of their form, right? And so I will tell one that wasn't a ghost story, but does leave me questioning my intuition. I was taking a trip out west with your dad and a friend. We were going to be gone for about 2.5 weeks. It was a big trip out west. At any rate, on the way out, we stopped at a college town where a friend was working on her graduate work. And we stayed with her for 2 days. It was during the summer. During those 2 days, she talked about and was pretty openly agitated about making sure that whenever we went out at night that doors were locked and windows were locked and so on. And she began to tell us about how that summer in this college town there had been a person who had been breaking into places, and several girls had been raped over the course of the summer so far. So the town was sort of on high alert, and she was no exception. That's what she told us about, right? That's fine. So we leave and we continue on to Colorado and various other western states. And maybe 6 or 7 days after that, 8 or 9 days, a while afterwards, Your dad and I and our friend who was traveling with us, we were at a bar in some town outside of Denver, having lunch, having like lunch and a beer. And we're sitting in a booth, and I happen to look at the bar, and I see a man sitting at the bar, and he might as well have had a neon sign with an arrow above his head, because there was some reason I was absolutely compelled to watch this person. I could not watch him. In fact, I remember saying to myself, oh my goodness, stop staring at him, right? You're being rude. But I watched him from our booth. Your dad was next to me, and our friend Greg was across from us. At any rate, I noticed everything. I noticed what he was wearing. I noticed what he was smoking, what he ordered, that he got up twice to make a phone call at the payphone. I just watched him, and I said to your dad, I can't stop watching that man. It's freaking me out. So I took mental note of everything that I could possibly notice. And we left. We get in the car, and I remember asking your dad to get out a pad of paper so I could tell him every single thing that I remembered about the guy. And he wrote it down. So we finish our trip. We're traveling and camping another 6 or 7 days. We head back, and we stop at the same girl's apartment in the college town that we had on the way out, right? It was a way to end the trip and stay for free somewhere with a bed. And on that last night that we had with her, we all went out to dinner, and we're walking through the downtown on our way to dinner. And we're just walking by storefronts. And in the course of the 2 weeks since we had been gone, the town and the police had come up with an artist sketch of the rapist. The victims had come forward, and we passed by a storefront window with a poster in the window of a drawing of a man. And I stopped so suddenly on the sidewalk. Whoever was walking behind me just plowed into me because it was the man I'd seen in the bar. And there was his face on the poster. So everything made sense to me, right? This is why you were watching this man. You were supposed to notice him. And we immediately called the police in this college town. And I apologized, and I said, this is going to sound crazy. I don't care. 6 days ago, 400 miles to the west of here, in a town called this, and a bar called this, on this night, at this time, this man was there. And here's what he looked like. And anyways, the person who picked up the phone listened to me for a few minutes, and then she put me on the phone with, I guess I sounded both convincing enough and aware that what I was saying sounded ridiculous, but she passed me on to a sergeant who seemed very much to take me seriously, and asked me questions, and took down my personal information to contact me if they had further questions. Really wanted details of what I saw, where we were, time, everything. And so the long story, the short end of that, whatever, is that I never heard back from the police. I can tell you that my friend told me they found and arrested the person within 3 or 4 days of our calling, that he was found in Colorado. That's what I know, right? Whatever. It could have been nothing. It wasn't nothing, because I was absolutely compelled to watch him, because we came back to that same place and his face was on a poster. And though we don't want to take the time, energy, or film to discuss a few other crime-related moments that I've had, I have had 2 others, and to me they just seem like a different manifestation of the same level of sensitivity. A few years ago, I was at an artist's in residence place, a big old lovely home. My sister had worked there at the time, and myself and one of my sister's very good friends were spending the night The place was closed for the season, so there were not artists or writers there, just this big old rambling, beautiful, old, fabulous home that we stayed in because my sister continued to work there while the place was closed for the season. And on that night, my friend Lori and I each got to pick whatever bedroom we wanted to in this fabulous architectural gem. And so we each stayed on the second or third floor, I don't remember which. We each picked our own bedroom. And we went to bed. And during the course of the night, many times during the course of the night, I woke up. And when I woke up, what I heard was a party. I heard party sounds. I heard old-fashioned music. I heard people dancing. I heard people laughing. I absolutely felt that people were in my room. In fact, in my head, I kept saying to myself, what is she doing? Meaning, what is Lori doing? Why does she keep getting out of bed and making so much noise and coming in here? What is she doing? And why isn't she talking to me when she's in here? So on and so forth. At any rate, not a good night of sleep. It all felt benevolent and it felt like a party from the turn of the century, but it was something, it may have been, instead of interactive, it may have just been one of those replays that we talked about. But the next morning, and this is important I think, because Lori is not at all prone to these kinds of experiences, at all. The next morning when she and I, met together to go down to breakfast, and we both were just exhausted because of the night we'd had. I can't remember which one of us said it to the other first, but one of us basically said, what the hell were you doing last night? Or what was your problem? Why wouldn't you leave me? What was your problem, basically, is what we said. And we both looked at each other, and she said, how many times did you come into my room, right? What were you, sleepwalking? Blah, 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 blah. And we both reported very, very much exactly the same experience, that we were somehow either interrupting or uninvited guests to a party of fabulous, fun-loving people who were long dead, who continued to hang out in that house that has been hosting artists and writers for 80 years. And it freaked Lori out because she'd never had anything like that. And I got a bit of a kick out of it because certainly I had things like that, but when it's shared with someone else and it's new to them, it's just delightful.
She probably experienced it because you were there. Do you think she might not have experienced it if you were not there?
I don't know. My friend Lisa would probably say yes, because my friend Lisa, as much as she loves me, she doesn't really like to be with me overnight in places or whatever, because she's afraid something will happen.
Right.
Because I'm there. My mom was in a hospital and she was actively, she was going to die. She ended up having a bit of time, excuse me, at home after that particular stay. But I was visiting her and I was going to be coming back that next morning, so I was going to stay at my friend's in the city after I was done visiting Mom. And Mom's in her bed and she's pretty cheesed, she's not real talkative or anything. So I said, I'm just going to go get a cup of coffee. That's fine. So I left her hospital room, and the layout of the hallway is important for the story simply because there was a wall, and then there was a door, and the door, it was called Nourishment Room, where families who were visiting people in ICU could go in and get a cup of tea or make a cup of coffee or have a good cry or whatever they needed to do. It was just called the Nourishment Room. It wasn't a lounge, just a little closet that had basics, microwave, coffee maker, teapot. So I opened the door, and usually there was nobody in there, but I opened the door and I saw a man leaning against the counter, arms crossed, leaning against the counter, just hanging out in there, and I tried to be respectful of his private time, but it was really very tight quarters, like a small galley bathroom. And anyways, I found myself, I nodded and he nodded, we made contact, and the first thing he said to me, the very first thing he said to me, he didn't say hi or good evening, or the first thing he said was, what did one wave say to another? And I thought, well, I thought it's odd to open a conversation with a joke with a stranger, but I said, I don't know. And he said, high tide, low tide, and he started laughing. And I thought that was a cheesy little joke, and I had never heard it before, but I also thought that type of humor reminded me of my own dad. So I thought to myself, well, my dad would like you. You're a kind, cheesy man, is what I thought. And so in that joke, he sort of put me at ease a bit, and I went about, making my little cup of coffee and waiting for it to get ready, and I kind of leaned against the other counter, and he's leaning against his counter, and again, I'm absolutely staring. I'm staring at him, and I can't help it. In my head, I'm thinking, stop staring at him, you're being rude. But I am looking at him basically to see if he's real. Like, I'm looking at his arms, and I'm seeing that, yes, indeed, the hair on his arms, he was very hairy, and he was stocky, and he had a button-down shirt on. And I mean, yes, the hair goes into his skin. Yes, his arm is tight against the shirt. Yes, he's breathing. I mean, I'm absolutely not talking to him, but being terribly rude looking at him. Can't help it, can't stop it. And we have a conversation. I hear him talking to me, and I don't know if he was talking audibly or not. I mean, I had no reason to think that he wouldn't be, except for later, what happened. But at any rate, he is speaking to me in what I later described to people as sort of parables, right? As stories with a moral or a spiritual undertone, but they're told as stories. And I noticed that he had a scar on his skull that was quite similar to the markings my mom had from her multiple surgeries. And I'm looking at him thinking, oh, this man understands something about what we're going through, right? He's had brain trauma, whatever. And I feel for him because I'm thinking he's here because somebody he loves is in real trouble, But he's telling me stories, and he keeps, when he's telling me stories, he is wanting to speak. He's trying to speak like he's talking about a doctor, but he occasionally gets mixed up with the words. He will say, God, I mean doctor, right? And so God, I mean the doctor. He did that a couple times where I thought, what's he talking about? Is he talking about, what's he talking about? But he tried to talk to me about how doctors sometimes do things that we don't understand, but it's in our best interest, and if we trust in our, in our God, I mean doctor, things will, just this doctor God thing. He kept going back and forth, and he would intervene with jokes, and he would talk about struggles, and he would talk about how sometimes doctors tell us things we don't want to hear, but they are the truth, and that doctors don't necessarily operate the same way that we do, so we can't apply our daily human standards to what they... It was very strange, and he didn't sound crazy, he just sounded a little bit confused, but he kept making points, and at that point in my mom's journey towards dying, I was angry at some of the doctors, simply because of their bedside manner, not because I thought they could save her, but because I didn't like how they spoke to us and things. And so much of what he was saying to me made sense in a way. Okay, so we have this whole interchange, and I do very little talking. I'm mostly staring at him. He was Jewish. He was very Jewish. He looked Jewish. He sounded Jewish. Which doesn't matter, except I was born and raised very, very Catholic. And I had, at that point, and still, pulled away from the sort of rituals and dogmas that surrounded the church I was raised in. And so it's important that he was Jewish. As I grew up, I thought to myself, if I were to choose a faith, I would choose to be Jewish. I had friends of that faith, and I preferred that faith to my own. So whatever. So this guy was Jewish. wasn't a man of the cloth, right? And at any rate, my coffee was done, and so I poured the cup, and I'm thinking, I gotta get back to my mom. She's probably asleep now, whatever. And so he goes to open the door of this tiny, crowded galley space. He goes to open the door, and I'm seeing his muscular, stubby, hairy, 58, 60-year-old arm open the door. And he goes in front of me, but makes sure that the door is open so it doesn't hit me with my coffee. And I looked down at my cup for like a second to make sure the door didn't hit me, whatever. I look up, and he's gone. He is not anywhere. And again, the setup is important because to the left, after a bridge of walls, was my mother's room. To the right, after a wall, was the nurse's station. And straight ahead of the door was a wall. There was nothing but a wall. So, he just disappeared. He opened the door. I looked down, I looked up, and he was simply gone. And he wasn't to the right down the hall, and he wasn't to the left to my mom's room, and he wasn't in front of me, in the hallway. He just was gone. And I went back to my mom's room, and as I'm walking back, I'm thinking, that guy he didn't do anything, and he didn't grab a yogurt, he didn't make a tea, he didn't grab a pop, he didn't do anything. He did nothing but be in there when I walked in, spend the time with me, and then disappear when I was done. So when I got back to my mom's room, I hadn't even really thought it through except to say, wow, that was weird. He didn't do anything except disappear. I said to my mom, I think I just met an angel. And she said, oh, that's nice. She was pretty brain damaged, but she was also, it didn't shock her. And when I then told the story to my friend who I was spending the night with, I said very confidently, because she said to me, who do you think it was? And I said, I think he was an angel. I think his name was Larry. And I don't know where I got that other than just a sort of a knowledge base, And even my dad, who was so very, very Catholic, acknowledged that indeed, perhaps if I was supposed to be comforted by God, that it's probably best it came to me in the form of a humorous Jewish old man that I would listen to and not have defenses up against. And I have only one other time since that time heard Larry's voice, been comforted by him. He uses humor. That, if that has anything to do with anything else, I don't know, except that it was a stunning experience.
Can you tell us when you, in the car, when you heard him again?
Yeah, I mean, and this sounds, I'm afraid it sounds a little cheap. I mean, it was sometime after my mom had actually died, and I was sitting in the car getting ready to go in and get my hair cut, and at this place...
You're by yourself?
I was by myself. In the middle of the day, like 2:30 in the afternoon, I'm getting ready to go in to get my hair done, and the place where I got my hair done had nice gifts and trinkets and so on and so forth, but quality stuff. And I remember, because my mom had passed, feeling a need to sort of comfort myself and wondering if maybe my friend Susan who owned the shop, maybe she had some cool angel stuff or something. But anyways, I'm in the car getting my stuff together, and I hear audibly in the car Larry's voice, which was just a real live old Jewish man's voice. And he says that, I'm not even going to try to imitate the voice because I can't do it, but he says that he's frustrated because he doesn't know why angels are always depicted as beautiful, beautiful figures in flowing robes with wings, and why don't you ever see a bald fat angel? You know, because they don't all look like, they don't all have wings, and they aren't all beautiful. You know, why don't they have little fat bald Jewish statues? You know, and just he was kind of bitching about not being represented in the world of angel accessories or whatever. And I was stunned, and I laughed, and I thought, well, that's a good point. You know, maybe the guy's got something. You know, not everybody relates to, you know, images of Gabriel or whatever. So I will just I'm gonna stop this maybe this whole thing by saying that when I watched City of Angels, and that movie came out after I'd had my hospital moment. When I watched that movie, and have watched it since, I will just say that it very much, I think that they sort of got it, you know, it rang true to me. The experience of seeing a being in the hospital, right, where emotions are high, people are transitioning, so on and so forth. And just honestly, even the wording, whoever wrote the script for the exchange that Nicolas Cage had as the angel, it just rang very true to me, as well as the other guy in the film, Dennis Franz. I think they got it. You know, it felt true to me, like what it was like. And there's more, but that's enough.
Thank you very much, Mom.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate how much you've told us. It's pretty incredible.
My guess it is.
You guess it is.
I guess yeah.
You know it's incredible.
I guess it's rare, I suppose.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.